Hey guys, it's me Marcus, and today we're gonna be talking about the Indomptable, or however you say it. So this is gonna be similar to the video that I did on the 1000 shot bow, testing out the 1000 shot bow, and this one is testing out the Indomptable. And so we're gonna get into the stats really soon, but I just wanted to say this sword is amazing, and thank you so much to Dylan BGBGB for lending me this sword so I can test it out. And yeah, so, let's get into it. So first of all, it has 566 to 650 damage, so it does a lot of damage. It has a 25% rate of fire, so it shoots really slowly. And then its damage output, 566 to 650, is around 2 times as much as the claim, which is around up to 270 damage per shot, but obviously it hits only 25% rate of fire, and then it has a -10 defense. So that means if you take off your gear, then you have a -10 defense, and if you aren't maxed, you actually probably take more damage than you would having no armor or no sword on. But this sword is part of the Dragon Tamer set, which is the new set, and that set is pretty amazing. But I'm pretty sure no one has a full set yet, so this sword is pretty awesome. And also the biggest thing is that it pierces. So yeah. So we're gonna go test out this sword, doing all sorts of dungeons, godlands farming, and I'll tell you guys what I think about it in all of these instances, and see if whether or not. So our first step is we're going to test the sword out in the Godlands and see how it fares. So I'll speed up the gameplay, and I'll first try to see whether or not it is viable in the Godlands right now. Okay, so after a few seconds of farming, the first thing I notice is that this sword isn't that good for Godlands. Now, the reason being is that the rate of fire is so slow that it makes aiming at the gods a hassle, and you have to aim very precisely in order to kill the gods. Otherwise, it takes forever in order for you to kill many gods at once. Now, the piercing does come into handy, but if you don't have a lot of gods grouped together, it doesn't actually do so well. So there's that. If you miss one shot and miss one shot, you gotta keep aiming, and it might take a while for you to actually hit the enemies that you want to hit. Now we're going to be doing the Sprite boss, and as you can see here, again, the same problem comes up, is that the rate of fire is really slow, especially if you want to use it on a knight or a paladin. So the rate of fire is really slow, and when you're trying to chase it around, it's hard. But when you get it to stay still, you can actually kill the boss really fast because of its super high damage output. Alright guys, so time to try out the sword on an abyss. So obviously this pet isn't the most amazing pet. It's only a 77 with a decoy as a third ability. So decoy is better than every other ability other than electric, so that's pretty good. But let's try to do this abyss with this sword, and I'll tell you what I feel about it. So the rate of fire is pretty concerning, but as I'm doing it right now, it seems like since the pierce is coming through and the enemies chase you in a line, it seems like this sword is actually pretty good for abysses, as it one-shots every single enemy. Now, if you are going to compare this to an acclaim with from a warrior, you know, warriors already one-shot enemies in the abyss if you are maxed attack with an acclaim, and that shoots a lot faster. So in terms of using a warrior to do abysses with this sword, I'd say actually an acclaim is better for clearing abysses. But if you're doing something like on a knight, knights don't one-hit it, so it is viable to use this sword instead of an acclaim because it pierces and it one-shots everything. But that is only for the knight. Paladin also one-shots everything when it's boosted, so that's why I think for abysses this sword actually isn't that good either. But let's clear the rest of the abyss, and I'll rush it really fast. Alright, time for the boss, and we are going to get underway. Does a lot of damage, around 1000 damage per shot, and it does pierce through. So on the Abyss of Demons boss, it does do a lot of damage, and then you can hit it, but it doesn't do it in one phase, so I'm saying that I don't think this is the best sword for the Abyss either, since the other swords can actually easily clear it in its first phase, but because of the slow rate of fire, this sword isn't that good for the boss either. Alright guys, so now we're going to test it on an Undead Lair. So we'll go through it. In terms of the melee classes, rushing a UDL should be easy regardless of what sword you use. In fact, I usually don't even clear the UDL while rushing. I just don't even use my sword. I just walk around, and it works pretty well. And unfortunately, Dylan, I'm not gonna be replying to any of these PMs because I don't really want to make it awkward between us, and I'm also recording, so I'm sorry about that if you're watching it right now. But yeah, so let's try to do the boss right now. It's firing so slowly, so it's hard to get in damage. I got 1,000 damage in right now, and for this phase, this Pierce is pretty good. And in terms of the Septavius boss fight, I'd say this sword is pretty good for it. Because it pierces and there are a lot of minions during the Septavius, so that's pretty awesome. Alright, hey guys, back again, and it took me like an hour to find a snake pit, but finally we're here and we're gonna try to do a snake pit. Again, this rate of fire is really concerning. It's hard to do these dungeons with such a slow rate of fire. We're gonna try to look for a T-room because that would be cool if we were able to show you how fast this sword can destroy the T-room boss, because it doesn't have that much HP, so I'm assuming it would kill it really fast. But actually, let's go to the boss first, if I can actually find it. And let's see how fast this goes. So it is doing a lot of damage right now. You gotta keep it boosted. Honestly, if I were to recommend this sword, I would have to recommend it on the warrior, since you can boost yourself and make yourself a lot faster in the with the fire rate. But let's see here. And we are able to clear this pretty fast. It isn't the best sword for Sneno, but it is pretty nice because of the high damage output per shot. So we found a Puppets Master Theater, and now we're gonna try this with the sword. This might not go too well because of the pet, but I'm gonna try to rush it. So again, the problem is that the rate of fire is really slow, and breaking down these obstacles is actually really hard. You're gonna be standing here for quite a bit of time, and that may result in you dying. Shoot. I would not recommend doing this with this sword. I think I'm gonna have to switch because I'm getting kind of close to death. I don't really want to die on this guy's character. Yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah, not good for puppets, just FYI. And also, when doing the boss of the puppets, it's gonna go through a lot of phases, and with this slow rate of fire, you're gonna miss a lot of shots, and you're not gonna get a lot of damage in on a lot of the puppets phases. Alright guys, so now for our last dungeon. Before I give a last word about this sword, we're gonna clear this one, or not clear it. We're gonna rush this one, and let's see how we do. Alright, so time for the boss. Let's see how this fares. So the shot fire is still pretty bad if you're soloing this or doing it with other people, but we still got loot. So the cool thing about this sword, I have to admit, is that when you shoot and you hit it for once, when you're in a big group, if you hit it once, you definitely get guaranteed SB loot, because with one shot, this Indomitable, or whatever it is called, it hits 1,000 damage, and that's a lot, and so you definitely get your loot if you hit it once. So before my final verdict, I want to put some things out there for different dungeons, such as the higher tier dungeons, such as the shatters, tombs, stuff that people would normally do, not stuff like shading and stuff. But in terms of OTs, this sword is pretty good, since you are able to hit a lot of enemies with it, as long as they rush at you, especially with ponies. When you get hit by a pony and you're paralyzed there and you sit there on a warrior, now just take out your Indomitable or whatever it's called, and you can shoot the pony a few times and it'll definitely get killed. So the cool thing about this sword is that it does a lot of damage per hit. So The coolest things are that if you're doing a tomb, you can just hit the boss a few times, like maybe 4 or 5 times, and you guarantee yourself loot. And that goes the same way for most of these different dungeons if you're doing it with other people. If you're doing a shatters, this sword is pretty good since it does a lot of damage. Um, and it is pretty good for the bosses and most of that stuff. So I would recommend this sword. If you do like to do shatters, you can go farm for it, and it will help you out a lot in shatters since it does a lot of damage, and it will penetrate the defense a lot. Other things such as the tomb, if you want to do a clean tomb, this sword isn't the greatest since the piercing effect makes it not the greatest. It might affect the other bosses. Um, OTs, it's pretty good. Yeah, so those are the higher tier dungeons that I can't go into for today in this video, but I might in the future. But this is just a little, playthrough, some gameplay of, and what I think about this sword in general. And my final verdict is that if you don't want to look for a vanity item such as this item looks so cool. It's such a cool sword. But if you don't want to spend all this time farming for a sword that won't be that useful for you, I wouldn't recommend getting it because this sword isn't that good. Can't really use it. You can only use it in certain situations, and it isn't the greatest. But if you do get it, you have to be pretty happy. This sword looks pretty cool. The shot looks amazing. It's like you're shooting a little fireball out every time. And it's part of the Dragon Tamer set, which has a cool skin and is basically a UT. So what I have to say is that, you don't really need it, but if you do get it, enjoy it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you so much for Dylan to lending me this sword so I could test it out for a video. Please PM him in game. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm gonna end the video there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's just me testing out the sword. And yeah, see you guys next time.